My husband chose our daughter's graduation to leave me. I responded with an envelope. My name is Evelyn Hartwell, and I stand at the precipice of 52 years, a life woven with stories untold. If anyone had ever posed the question of how I envisioned the day my daughter would graduate from college, I can assure you that I never could have foreseen the events that unfolded today. In the intimate confines of an upscale French restaurant in downtown Savannah, the sharp clinking of glassware and sudden bursts of laughter echoed, creating an atmosphere thick with anticipation. A crowd of about 50 friends and family members had assembled, their faces a mix of joy and anticipation, to honor Sophia, my beloved only child. The girl with the luminous eyes and the smile that filled my heart with an overwhelming sense of pride, more than anything else in existence. I sat next to Sophia, my heart brimming with joy, until Chase, my husband of 26 years, abruptly rose to his feet. He lifted his champagne glass, a moment suspended in time, as if on the brink of delivering a heartfelt toast to our daughter. The air thickened with anticipation, every gaze locked onto him. But instead of the expected words of congratulations, I was met with a chilling declaration: "I've decided to start a new life without Bella." The room fell into an icy stillness, silverware halted mid-clatter, stunned whispers pierced the heavy silence, a gasp echoed from behind me, and me? I sat there, my eyes wide, blinking slowly, as if the world around me had come to a standstill. Every gaze was fixed upon me, anticipation crackling in the air like a storm ready to break. Shouting, sobbing, perhaps a theatrical slap reminiscent of the silver screen, Chase stood there, his glass quivering ever so slightly in his grip, challenging me to make a move. Yet, I refused to grant him that satisfaction. I smiled, a serene yet unsettling smile that caused Chase to instinctively retreat half an inch. With a deliberate motion, I set my napkin aside, rose to my feet, and retrieved a cream-colored envelope from the depths of my purse. I uttered it in his presence with a nonchalance that belied the weight of the moment, as if I were simply discussing the bill for dinner. "Text, this is a gift for you," I declared, my voice unwavering, cutting through the air with a clarity that demanded attention from all around. Sophia turned to face me, her eyes wide and glistening with unshed tears, a storm of emotions swirling within them. She stood there, the graduation cap perched atop her head, the pale blue dress we had meticulously chosen just last week now feeling like a ghost of happier moments, starkly contrasting with the weight of the air around us. I leaned down, pressing my lips gently to her forehead, my voice barely above a whisper as I said, "I'm proud of you. Today is your day, don't let anyone take that away from you." With a sudden resolve, I straightened my posture and surveyed the room, a charged silence enveloping me. Recognizable silhouettes loom in the shadows. Those who had once gathered in our home for festive Christmas dinners, who had once filled my kitchen with laughter and light-hearted banter, now averted their eyes from me as if they were remorseful children caught in a moment of shame, because they were aware. They were all acutely aware of Chase's involvement with a woman nearly 2 decades his junior, a girl named Lauren, who once affectionately referred to me as Sis during her visits. I inhaled sharply, forcing a smile that barely concealed the turmoil within, and spoke with a strained cheerfulness, "Please, everyone, enjoy the rest of the party. Have a truly wonderful afternoon." Without a moment's hesitation, I spun on my heel and strode out of the banquet room, leaving a charged silence in my wake. My heels clicked against the marble floor, reverberating through the room like a haunting bell in a hushed cathedral. I refused to glance over my shoulder. I could feel their eyes piercing through me, tracking my every move, even without turning to face them. As the weighty restaurant door crashed shut behind me, I finally surrendered to the release of my breath. The oppressive June heat of Georgia enveloped me, striking with an intensity that I embraced. It struck me with a jolt, a visceral reminder of my existence. I remained rooted in place. Behind me, the door burst open, and Chase's voice pierced the air, no longer steady, but filled with desperation. "Vimelo, what on earth are you doing? Have you lost your mind?" I descended the stone steps with deliberate slowness, a chilling smile unfurling across my face, one that Chase had never encountered. Over the years, I had expertly donned the mask of the devoted wife, so convincingly that he had forgotten the truth of who I was, a woman who had once forged a career from the ground up, only to relinquish it in service of his aspirations. I stood frozen, the weight of Chase's shouting hanging in the air, unacknowledged and heavy. I refused to look back, the weight of my decision heavy in the air. I clenched my purse tighter, the weight of the second envelope pressing against my palm, a copy of the divorce papers, and the damning evidence I had meticulously collected. The memory of that bitterly cold winter day lingers, a moment when everything within me irrevocably changed. On a chilling January evening, I found myself poring over the family's year-end bills, a sense of unease creeping in with each line I read. Chase was absent once more, spinning the familiar tale of client meetings in Hilton Head. As I unfolded the bank statement, a knot tightened in my stomach, the weight of anticipation pressing down on me. I braced myself, knowing that the numbers before me held secrets that could change everything, and I was about to confront them just before dinner. But then, a small, unfamiliar charge seized my attention, igniting a flicker of unease within me. A jewelry store nestled in the heart of Atlanta, where dreams shimmer and secrets linger in the air. A deep frown creased my brow. Chase had never adorned himself with jewelry, and it had been years since I had felt the thrill of receiving a gift from him. A chilling wave of dread surged through my heart. I began to observe with heightened awareness. New, unsettling charges emerged, casting a shadow of doubt: dinners at lavish restaurants, mysterious hotel charges, unexpected flight tickets to cities Chase never even hinted at. I chose not to confront him. I held my silence, refraining from screams or accusations. Instead, I silently absorbed every detail. Moments, figures, intricacies. A week later, I found myself face to face with Chase's abandoned iPad, lying ominously on the sofa. The screen flickered with an unsettling glow, a conversation hanging in the air, charged with unspoken words. Lauren. Her name shimmered at the top, accompanied by a torrent of messages that whispered of a new life, a house by the beach, and intimate nights shared in solitude. I shut the iPad with trembling hands, yet my thoughts were sharper than they had ever been. If Chase believed I would fade into the shadows without a fight, he had gravely underestimated me. That night, as Chase stepped through the door, I met him with a smile that felt like a mask, poured him a glass of wine, and feigned normalcy, even as the air crackled with unspoken truths. Yet deep within, my resolve had solidified. The following day, I found myself face to face with Charlotte Reynolds, a divorce attorney whose presence I had not forgotten since our encounter at a finance seminar years prior. Charlotte exuded an intensity that was both piercing and unwavering, her presence commanding attention while shrouded in an air of secrecy. This is precisely what I was yearning for. In her sunlit office, I unveiled the truth, each detail heavy with unspoken weight. The finances loom ominously, the messages pulse with unspoken truths. Chase's behavior is increasingly erratic, and my gut feelings scream for attention. Charlotte's eyes narrowed, a flicker of understanding igniting within her as she nodded, the weight of the unspoken truth hanging heavily in the air. Text: the first thing, she declared, her voice trembling with urgency, is to check the prenuptial agreement. With trembling hands, I retrieved a copy from the depths of the home safe. It was a document that Chase had demanded, a shadow looming over our impending vows. When my possessions outnumbered his, the memory of that bitter taste lingered as I signed it, a moment I thought would fade into the past. Yet, here I stand, more than 2 decades later, realizing that same paper has transformed into my shield, a testament to the weight of time and consequence. Should either party be discovered to have engaged in infidelity during the marriage, the other party would seize control of the majority of the marital assets, encompassing the house, retirement accounts, and investments. From that moment on, each night, as Chase departed for his meetings, I found myself consumed by the weight of the hours, poring over bills, scrutinizing bank transactions, and sifting through emails, meticulously backing everything up to a private hard drive. I enlisted the help of a private investigator, Jason, a childhood friend of my brother's, to shadow Chase whenever the situation demanded it. In a matter of moments, Jason unveiled the damning photos of Chase and Lauren, their fingers intertwined against the backdrop of a beach resort, where they had cunningly registered under false identities. I moved with precision, each action deliberate, as if I were navigating a high-stakes chess match. Leaving Chase was not something I desired. I yearned for him to experience the crushing weight of powerlessness, to savor the bitter sting of betrayal he had so nonchalantly dealt to me throughout the past year. After 3 long months of relentless pursuit, I finally amassed a mountain of evidence. In that moment, Chase maintained the facade of the ideal family man, concealing the turmoil brewing beneath the surface. Dinners with Sophia, where whispered hopes of retirement dreams hang heavy in the air. Little did he know that each deceit, each averted gaze, only fortified my determination. In a moment heavy with anticipation, Charlotte urged me to hold off until after Sophia's graduation, ensuring that every detail was meticulously secured. Part of me was desperate to protect my daughter's big day from any shadow of disappointment. On the other hand, I sensed that Chase would seize that very moment to act, driven by his obsession with appearances over the truth lurking beneath the surface. I meticulously arranged the cream-colored envelope, its contents heavy with Charlotte's carefully crafted documents, the divorce petition, damning evidence of betrayal, and an exhaustive list of assets poised for division as dictated by the prenup. This morning, I slipped it into my purse, a small act that felt heavy with unspoken significance. I stood on the precipice, heart racing, every nerve alive with anticipation. All I craved was for Chase to take that final leap into the unknown, and he certainly did not let me down. The echo of Chase's frantic footsteps pounding behind me, his desperate cries for my name, ignited a fierce determination within me. With every step, I shed the weight of years spent in blind loyalty, moving toward a future unshackled from the suffocating grip of betrayal and hollow promises. The frantic rhythm of Chase's shoes echoed against the pavement, each step a desperate plea as he pursued me, yet I refused to relent. His voice shattered in my ears, each word laced with fury and panic, echoing the turmoil within him. "Bah! This is impossible. Speak to me." I paused at the corner, shadows creeping in as I stood beneath the sign of a small flower shop, and slowly turned around. Chase surged forward, gripping the envelope I had abandoned on the banquet table as if it were his last lifeline. "What in the world is this?" Chase unleashed a furious roar, brandishing the envelope like a weapon. I held my gaze firm, unwavering, as if the world around me had faded into silence. "I'm simply delivering what you've toiled for all this time," I said with a hint of irony. With a swift motion, he ripped the envelope apart, his heart racing as he pulled out the stack of papers within. His face ignited with a deep crimson, only to drain of color in mere moments. I watched as his hands shook, the tension palpable, as he began to read the first lines. "Proof of betrayal. Where did all of this come from?" he whispered, his voice trembling with unspoken weight. I crossed my arms, my voice steady yet charged with unspoken weight. "Sometimes," I said, "it only takes one person to be careless while the other holds on with unwavering patience." Chase shot his head up, a surge of panic igniting in his eyes. You think you can wield this against me? Think again. The prenup has long since faded into the past." A smile crept onto my lips, yet it was laced with an unmistakable hint of irony that I could not conceal. "You ought to have examined it with greater scrutiny before putting your signature down." Clause 14 asserts with unwavering certainty that it endures for the entirety of the marriage. You were adamant about it back then, consumed by anxiety over your assets. Now, in a twist of fate, it shields me. Chase's gaze fell upon the file once more, his fist tightening around a corner of the paper, as if the sheer force of his grip could alter the course of fate. I kept my gaze locked on his face, witnessing the familiar smugness crumble, fragment by fragment. "But what if I lose everything?" he gasped, his voice thick with emotion. I tilted my head, feigning contemplation, though every detail was etched in my mind with haunting clarity. "The house in Savannah, your portion of our retirement accounts, and almost 70% of our joint investments hang in the balance. About that personal account you believed was safely concealed, I've taken the liberty of freezing it already." Chase staggered backward, as though a powerful blow had landed upon him. "No way," he gasped, his voice trembling with disbelief. Lauren and I stood at the precipice of uncertainty, our hearts racing as the weight of unspoken words hung heavily in the air. Every glance exchanged was charged with unrelenting tension, a silent battle of emotions threatening to erupt. The world around us faded, leaving only the raw intensity of the moment, where every breath felt like a fragile thread connecting. We had a plan, a fragile thread woven with hope and uncertainty, the new house, the new life, a fragile promise hanging in the air, teetering on the edge of uncertainty. I interrupted him, my voice steady yet cutting like a blade. Your new life awaits, Chase. We begin our journey in a rented apartment, with a bank account frozen in time. The early summer breeze whispered secrets, carrying the haunting scent of flowers from the shop next door, stirring emotions long buried. In the midst of that serene setting, Chase appeared profoundly adrift, resembling a man who had suddenly come to the devastating realization that he had lost everything in an instant. He gripped the stack of papers with a fierce intensity, his eyes burning with emotion. You're tearing me apart, Bella, he gasped, his voice thick with anguish. No, I replied, my gaze piercing and unyielding. For far too long, you've been trapped in this cycle of self-inflicted pain. I'm simply allowing you to face the repercussions of your actions. A taxi screeched to a halt, its engine growling like a beast ready to pounce. I raised my hand, signaling with urgency, not allowing a single moment to pass as the man stood before me, paralyzed like a statue. As the car door creaked open, I cast a lingering glance over my shoulder, my heart racing with unspoken words and unresolved feelings. Chase, I uttered, my voice a hushed whisper, laden with finality. I once loved you with every fiber of my being, yet, he cast aside everything for a momentary illusion. From this moment forward, you must face the world alone. I slid into the taxi, the door slamming shut behind me with a finality that echoed in the silence. As the car pulled away, through the window, I caught a glimpse of Chase standing there, utterly alone, clutching the crumpled envelope. His expression was one of profound confusion, the kind that comes when a man realizes he has just lost everything he held dear. Within me, there was an absence of anger, an absence of pain, replaced instead by an overwhelming, profound sense of relief, as though I had finally cast off a heavy, rusted suit of armor that had burdened me for far too long. I was acutely aware that a daunting journey lay before me, fraught with the relentless legal struggle, the whispers of gossip, and the piercing gazes of the curious, yet, deep within, I felt the surge of triumph as I grasped the most invaluable treasure of all, the undeniable right to shape my own destiny. I stepped back into the old house nestled in Savannah's historic district, where the fading evening light cast a haunting glow over the red brick walls, igniting memories long buried. This house had once embodied the very essence of all we had forged together. At least, that was the conviction I clung to. Less than an hour after I stepped inside, the sudden roar of a car screeched into the driveway, shattering the stillness. The front door burst open with a violent force, the hinges groaning in protest. Chase burst through the door, a tempest of confusion and anger, the crumpled paper clenched tightly in his fist. Bella, he shouted, his voice laced with desperation. We have to talk. Now that I sat frozen on the living room sofa, the warm yellow lamplight flickering ominously, casting haunting shadows on the family photo wall. I shut my laptop, fixing my gaze on him, my expression betraying nothing. Sit down, I commanded, my voice steady yet laced with an undercurrent of urgency, as if beckoning a stranger into a web of unspoken truths. But Chase didn't sit, he prowled the room like a trapped beast, his fingers raking through his hair, each breath a struggle, heavy with unspoken turmoil. You can't do this, he finally erupted, his finger jabbing in my direction, as if grasping for a flicker of compassion in the storm of emotions swirling around us. Just moments ago, we received the devastating news. The lease for the Midtown apartment Lauren and I were on the brink of renting has been denied. Why must it be this way? I sank into the couch, my fingers entwined, a storm of thoughts brewing beneath a facade of calm. Is it because your credit file was marked? I responded with a calm facade, concealing the storm brewing within. A series of alarming transactions set off a system alert, igniting a sense of unease. The brokerage office rang our home number for verification, and I picked up the call. As any devoted wife might, wouldn't she? Chase's eyes widened, a storm of disbelief swirling within them. He opened his mouth, yet silence enveloped him like a heavy fog that I pressed on, leaving him no moment to gather his thoughts. But wait, there's more. That personal account you believed was safely concealed? It lies in a state of suspension, bound by a temporary court order. A sly grin crept across my face. Congratulations, Chase. This moment is monumental. At this moment, you stand before two stark choices: depend on the generosity of those around you, or embark on a journey to embrace a life of humility. Chase collapsed into the chair opposite me, his elbows digging into his knees as he buried his head in his hands, a heavy silence enveloping the room. It was a haunting image, etched into my mind, destined to linger for an eternity. I just wanted a better life, he mumbled, his voice barely a whisper, lost in a haze of despair. Lauren and I had plans, Bella. We yearned for a new beginning. Then start, I commanded, my voice soft yet cutting like a blade. Begin by taking the responsibility of paying your own rent. Take responsibility for your own electric bills, confront the weight of your own actions. He glanced upward, his face burning with a deep crimson hue. Your actions are shattering my existence for a single misstep. I laughed, a dry, hollow sound echoing with a profound absence of forgiveness. Every word was underscored by a weight of regret. Overlooking your wife's birthday is a grave error. Forgetting a coat at a restaurant can lead to a cascade of regret. Your actions, betraying trust, concealing funds, plotting to leave your family on your daughter's most significant day, are not mere errors, they are deliberate decisions. Chase's gaze bore into me, the weight of his usual excuses crumbling under the intensity of the moment. I need money, he declared, his voice heavy with desperation, as if the mere acknowledgement of the truth could somehow change their dire circumstances. I crossed my arms, leaning back, a storm brewing within me. Yet a hidden account: you had Lauren, you had dreams, but now you find yourself without me, and without Sophia. The weight of what you've lost hangs heavy in the air. The mere mention of Sophia's name sent a jolt through Chase, striking him like a blow to the heart. Is she aware? He asked, his voice trembling with unspoken weight. Not yet, I said, but soon. And when that moment arrives, you'll find yourself the one unraveling the chaos of why her graduation day spiraled into a catastrophe. Chase sat paralyzed, as if the heavy burden of his mistakes had finally come crashing down upon him. I stood there, my heart racing as I reached for my keys on the table, the weight of the moment hanging heavily in the air. You have 2 days to gather your belongings, I declared, my voice unwavering and resolute. Following that, the locks will be changed. You must seek out a different place to begin your new life. With each step toward the door, I felt the weight of the moment pressing down on me, refusing to glance back, as if the past itself might reach out and pull me back into its grasp. As I shut the door, I abandoned him to the weight of his own breath, ensnared in a chilling silence that he could no longer navigate. I sped towards Deanna's house, Chase's sister, the sole member of his family who had remained steadfast in her loyalty to me. Her small house, adorned with pale blue shingles, loomed quietly beneath the towering oak trees, just on the outskirts of downtown, a silent witness to the unfolding drama of life around it. As I approached, she stood on the porch, her expression etched with anxiety, a storm of emotions brewing beneath the surface. Are you really okay? Deanna's voice pierced the air the moment I emerged from the car. Better than you think, I said, forcing a smile that barely concealed the turmoil within. Deanna wrapped her arms around me, a silent understanding passing between us, her grip firm and unyielding. In that fleeting moment, a realization washed over me. I had discovered the sanctuary I desperately needed to gather my thoughts. Sophia would arrive later that night, her laughter still echoing from the celebration with her friends, a bittersweet anticipation hanging in the air. I texted her, pouring my heart into every word, promising that everything would be all right, that all she had to do was trust me. We were nestled in the living room, the soothing aroma of mint tea enveloping us, when the doorbell rang with an unsettling urgency, fracturing the tranquility that surrounded us. Deanna shot me a piercing glance, her expression shifting as she placed her cup down with a deliberate clink before striding toward the door to answer it. Each heavy footstep reverberated ominously across the hardwood floor, filling the air with an unsettling anticipation. Chase and Lauren crossed the threshold, the air thick with unspoken words. Two storms collide, each raging with fierce intensity, their paths destined to clash in a dramatic confrontation. Chase appeared utterly shattered, his eyes sunken and devoid of life, as Lauren. Her blonde hair curled meticulously, the expensive dress clinging uncomfortably, as she hesitated to raise her gaze. I remained in my seat, heart racing, anticipation hanging heavy in the air. Bella. Chase initiated, his voice trembling with barely contained intensity. We need to have a serious conversation. We've exchanged words long enough, I responded with a chilling calmness. Lauren shifted anxiously beside him, her eyes flickering around, betraying her unexpected turmoil. Chase pivoted sharply to face Deanna, desperation flickering in his eyes as he searched for an ally. But she stood firm, arms crossed defiantly, a barrier between them and the living room, her resolve unyielding as she denied them passage. Just then, Sophia stepped through the back door, her navy graduation dress clinging to her as she walked, high heels caked in dirt, a stark contrast to the moment's gravity. As she beheld the scene unfolding before her, time seemed to stand still, her body stiffened, and her eyes ignited with a fierce, uncontainable rage. "What are you doing here, Dad?" Sophia's voice cut through the air, more piercing than I had ever experienced. "Dad, I need to share everything with you." Chase took a step closer, his heart racing, but Sophia abruptly raised her hand, halting him in his tracks. "What are you asking me to clarify?" she erupted. "Unravel the reasons behind the chaos you unleashed on my graduation day, or the betrayal you inflicted upon Mom as you sought to seize everything within your grasp." Chase stood motionless, his lips drawn into a tense line. Lauren's fingers brushed against his arm, a desperate attempt to anchor him, but he resolutely shook his head, a storm brewing in his eyes. "I made mistakes," Chase choked out, his voice quivering with raw emotion, "yet, I remain your father, Sophia." She gazed at him, her eyes overflowing with a profound sense of disappointment. Sophia's voice trembled with intensity, "Don't hide behind your father to justify your actions. If you had genuinely valued family, you would never have opted for betrayal today, of all days." The air became suffocating. Chase turned to Lauren, his eyes pleading for her understanding, but Lauren had already stepped back, her gaze transforming from a flush of embarrassment to a shadow of doubt. "That money Chase promised to invest in our new apartment," Lauren stammered, her voice trembling with uncertainty. You claimed it had already been transferred, but I just reached out to the bank. The account is frozen, leaving us in a precarious situation." Were they all merely hollow vows? Chase averted his gaze, the weight of unspoken words hanging heavily in the air. I remained in my seat, the silence heavy, words unnecessary. Lauren's gaze swept across the room, her heart racing as she turned back to face Chase. The realization fractured her expression, splintering it into 1,000 jagged pieces. "What more are you concealing from me?" she demanded, her voice trembling with emotion. Chase remained silent, the weight of unspoken words hanging heavily in the air. In that heavy silence, Lauren realized she had staked her future on a hand destined for defeat. "I was such a fool," Lauren whispered, her voice quaking with emotion, before she spun around and bolted out the door, leaving Chase in stunned silence, unable to utter a single word. The door crashed shut, reverberating ominously throughout the house. Sophia stood frozen as she watched Lauren walk away, a storm of sorrow and disappointment etched across her face as she turned back to Chase. "I don't know if I'll ever be able to forgive you," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, heavy with exhaustion, "but at this moment, all I desire is for you to go." Chase parted his lips, the words teetering on the edge of his tongue, but in the end, he simply nodded, the weight of unspoken thoughts hanging heavily in the air. He trudged toward the door, each step weighed down by an invisible burden, like a man stripped of all he once held dear. As the door shut with a finality that echoed in the silence, Diana's hand found its way to my shoulder, her grip a soft yet poignant reminder of the weight of the moment. Sophia approached and settled beside me, her head gently leaning against my shoulder, a nostalgic echo of her childhood innocence. Silence enveloped us, heavy and unyielding. Words were unnecessary in the weight of the moment. The silence had transformed, no longer suffocating but charged with an unspoken weight. It marked the dawn of an uncertain journey. A fleeting opportunity to rise from the ashes of devastation we believed was beyond salvation. The preliminary hearing loomed on a Wednesday morning, set against the backdrop of a small, historic courthouse in Chatham County, where the air was thick with anticipation. The Savannah sky loomed ominously that day, a thick blanket of gray clouds reflecting the weighty atmosphere surrounding those bracing themselves for an unyielding legal confrontation. I stepped into the room alongside my lawyer, Charlotte Reynolds, a formidable presence with her sharp, silver hair and an unwavering gaze that pierced through the tension. Unyielding in the face of any adversary, Chase arrived, a shadow looming over the scene, accompanied by a young lawyer whose presence was unfamiliar and unsettling. A young man, seemingly just emerged from the hallowed halls of law school, gripped a hefty stack of files with a nervous intensity that hinted at the weight of his responsibilities. Charlotte shot me a fleeting look, her lips twisting into a subtle, knowing smirk. "Don't worry," she whispered, "he's no match." We settled into our seats at the plaintiff's table, while Chase faced us, a shadow of the self-assured man who had once entered my life 26 years ago. He averted my gaze, nervously toying with the frayed strap of his watch. The judge, an imposing figure with a piercing gaze, strode in and commanded the room with her presence, calling for the opening statement. Charlotte started by revealing everything, her voice trembling with the weight of her words. The prenuptial agreement stood firm, yet Chase had shattered the fidelity clause, compelling the urgent need to freeze the marital assets to safeguard fairness in the impending division. Chase's lawyer rose to his feet, his complexion drained of color. "Your Honor," he began, his voice trembling with uncertainty. "We contend that the prenup has faded into irrelevance, its validity eroded by the absence of explicit renewal terms over time." The judge's eyebrow arched in skepticism as he flipped through the file, the air thick with anticipation. Clause 17 unmistakably declares, "The agreement shall endure for the entirety of the marriage and any ensuing dissolution proceedings." No expiration date is provided. With a decisive slam, she shut the file, plunging the courtroom into an oppressive hush. The court has deemed the prenuptial agreement valid, and the plaintiff has presented compelling evidence of a grave breach of fidelity. Marital assets will remain frozen for the duration of the case, she declared with unwavering conviction. I cast a furtive glance at Chase as he sank into his seat, a shadow of his former self, utterly spent. The judge pressed on, delving deeper into the matter of residence. "Mrs. Evelyn Hartwell, the plaintiff, is granted temporary exclusive use and management of the marital home, a decision that will stand until a final ruling is rendered. The defendant is permitted access solely to his personal account, restricted to the bare necessities of life." Chase's lawyer attempted to voice an objection, but the judge's hand shot up, commanding silence with an air of authority. "I have meticulously examined the transaction records, scrutinized personal spending, and uncovered evidence of financial misconduct. This decision is crucial to shield the plaintiff from any additional suffering. If only I had the power, would seize the moment." Charlotte's smile was a mere whisper, a shadow of knowing that suggested she had foreseen every twist and turn. As the temporary rulings echoed in the courtroom, a heavy silence fell over the room before the judge's gavel struck, signaling the adjournment of the hearing. The official trial is set to unfold within a mere 60 days, a countdown that looms heavy with anticipation. I stood up, meticulously collecting my papers, as Chase sat there, paralyzed in his chair. As I emerged from the courtroom, the sound of his uncertain footsteps echoed behind me in the desolate hallway. "Bella, please," he finally gasped, his voice trembling with desperation. Once, our hearts were intertwined in a love that felt unbreakable. It was in that moment, locking eyes with the one who had once made me believe we were unbreakable, that the weight of reality crashed down upon me. Now, they were consumed by an overwhelming sense of regret. I loved you, Chase, but I love myself, too. That love, fierce and unwavering, does not permit me to forgive betrayal. I spoke, my voice steady, devoid of anger or bitterness, yet heavy with the weight of my truth. Chase's gaze bore into me, his lips parting in a desperate attempt to find the right words, yet silence hung heavily in the air. He bowed his head, his shoulders heavy with the burden of his own regrettable decisions. I turned away, my footsteps echoing in the hall, a strange sense of peace battling against the turmoil within me. Outside, a gentle rain drummed against the cobblestone streets, each drop a reminder of the life I had left behind, a life that felt like a distant memory slipping through my fingers. The news of our divorce ignited a firestorm within our social circle, leaving shock and disbelief in its wake. In a matter of weeks, hushed whispers at gatherings morphed into an inescapable reality. Chase Monroe, once brimming with pride over his achievements, now stood as a mere echo of his former self. Shortly after the hearing, I learned that Lauren had walked away from Chase. With a heavy heart, she gathered her belongings and left the temporary apartment, a place that had become a battleground for Chase as he fought against the relentless tide of financial pressure. A mutual friend later revealed that one fateful night at a bar, Lauren had whispered, "I didn't sign up to love a broke man." The once promising company Chase had confidently claimed would rise to an empire now lay in ruins, its dreams shattered. With a complete lack of financial acumen and no allies to support him, disastrous investments siphoned away the last remnants of his dwindling resources. In just 3 months, a stark for lease sign loomed over his office, while the company website lay shrouded in silence, marked as under maintenance. Friends who once raised their glasses in celebration at every event vanished, leaving behind an echo of laughter that faded into silence. No more golf outings, no more charity galas, just an empty void where camaraderie once thrived. Several acquaintances, with a hint of hesitation, extended their hands toward me, yet I turned them away with a courteous refusal that I never needed them. And they had never truly required my presence. As Chase struggled amidst the ruins he had created, I silently pieced together my existence, beginning with the tiniest fragments. I signed up for a short financial counseling course for women at a local university, determined to sharpen my skills and reclaim my professional momentum. I secured a modest office within a storied building in downtown Savannah, its expansive windows framing a sun-drenched park that beckons with untold stories. On the window, I affixed a sign that read, "Evelyn Hartwell Financial Transitions," a quiet declaration of the storm brewing within. I selected that name with a clear purpose in mind, to guide women through the tumultuous storms of major life changes, divorce, widowhood, job loss, and career shifts. There were moments when I longed for someone to grasp my hand, guiding me through the shadows of my darkest days. Now, I yearned to become that person for others. My first client was a middle-aged woman, grappling with the profound loss of her husband after 3 decades of shared life. She sat across from me, her hands gripping a tissue tightly, her voice quivering with raw emotion as she confessed her deep-seated fear of losing financial control. "I don't even know where to begin," she murmured, her voice trembling with uncertainty. I smiled softly, my fingers lingering on the file before me, a weight of unspoken words hanging in the air. "We'll begin at this very moment," I promised, taking it one step at a time, "and you will never have to face it alone." Whispers traveled like wildfire. One client unraveled into another, each connection thickening the air with unspoken possibilities. Divorce attorneys, therapists, and even those who had merely whispered my name in passing started sending clients my way. In just 6 months, I found myself compelled to bring an assistant on board. Then, a partner emerged. Amidst the chaos of paperwork in my office, a forgotten photo emerged, igniting a surge of memories that threatened to unravel everything I thought I knew. It was me, Chase, and Sophia, caught in a moment that felt charged with unspoken words and lingering glances, standing in front of our house, the weight of that first summer enveloping us. I gazed at it, my heart racing, as time seemed to stretch endlessly. Silence hung heavy in the air, devoid of anger or regret, only an unsettling, hushed stillness lingers. Life had irrevocably changed. Nor was I. I had shed the identity of the woman who stood at the door, heart racing, consumed by the dread of a husband's uncertain return. She had shed the facade of a woman who sacrificed her own dreams merely to maintain a semblance of normalcy. As the sun dipped low in the sky, casting a haunting pink hue over the cobblestone streets, Sophia approached the office, her heart racing with an unshakable sense of urgency. She had just embarked on her new journey in Charleston, yet the pull of home was undeniable, drawing her back every weekend with an ache that lingered in her heart. "I'm so proud of you, Mom," Sophia said, her voice trembling as she wrapped her arms around me, the weight of her words hanging in the air. A smile crept across my face, yet beneath it, a storm of emotions churned, hinting at a deeper turmoil within. A happiness as unyielding and timeless as the ancient stones that paved the streets where I rediscovered my very essence. Chase had made his choice, and I had forged my own destiny. The final divorce trial unfolded on a crisp early fall morning, the air thick with unspoken tension. I stepped into the courtroom alongside Charlotte, her light gray dress a stark contrast to the storm brewing within me, a sense of calm masking the turmoil beneath the surface. For the entirety of summer, I had steeled myself for this very moment. Not merely to triumph, but to conclude this chapter with every last shred of pride that remains within me. Across the courtroom, Chase sat with a new lawyer, an older, more seasoned man whose presence seemed to weigh heavily in the air, yet, Chase appeared completely exhausted, as if the weight of the world rested heavily upon his shoulders. His suit hung awkwardly on his now much thinner frame, a stark reminder of the changes he had endured. The judge, the very one who had overseen the preliminary hearing, strode into the courtroom, her piercing gaze scanning the room with an intensity that commanded attention before she finally spoke. "Text, the case of Mrs. Evelyn Hartwell against Mr. Charles Monroe," she declared with a sharp edge to her voice. Charlotte rose to her feet, her heart racing as she meticulously displayed all the evidence before them. Chase's violation of the prenuptial agreement, the concealed assets, and the prolonged misuse of joint funds for personal gain create a web of betrayal and deceit. Transaction records, messages, photographs, each detail was painstakingly arranged, creating an impenetrable wall against any challenge. Chase's side found themselves with scant ground to stand on. They desperately sought to sway the decision, weaving a tapestry of ambiguous sentiments about their intertwined past and Chase's profound emotional influence on the family. As I stood to speak, a surge of determination coursed through me, my head held high, ready to confront the moment that lay before me. For over 2 decades, I declared with unwavering conviction. I poured every ounce of my strength, every moment of my time, and all my trust into this family. I not only nurtured our child and maintained our home, but I also bore the weight of every financial burden when my husband faltered. What I seek today is not vengeance. I am taking back what is mine, what I painstakingly created and what I am owed. The air thickened with an unbearable stillness following my declaration. Even Chase found himself speechless, devoid of any retort. He fixed his gaze on the floor, his fists tightly clenched, as if battling an overwhelming force within. At long last, after an agonizing 3 hours, the judge revealed the verdict. In light of the undeniable breach of the prenuptial agreement, the court decisively grants Mrs. Evelyn Hartwell complete ownership of the marital home in Savannah, safeguards her individual retirement accounts, and allocates a staggering 70% of the joint assets, encompassing investments and savings. Mr. Charles Monroe will keep solely his personal belongings and the remaining funds in his specified private account. I inhaled sharply as those words echoed in my mind, not in triumph, but in the profound release of a burden I had long carried. Chase stood utterly still, a statue caught in a moment of suspense. I cast a final glance in his direction, my heart heavy with a profound sense of regret, devoid of any hatred, for a man who had been stripped of everything. The weight of his own disastrous decisions hung heavily upon him. As I emerged from the courthouse, the autumn sunlight poured over me, a bittersweet caress that felt both comforting and haunting. Charlotte's hand brushed against my back, a fleeting touch that sent a shiver down my spine. "Congratulations, Bella," she said, a fleeting smile barely gracing the corner of her lips, as if it were a fragile secret waiting to be unveiled. You didn't merely acquire assets, you seized back your destiny.